I want people to be super careful. It's like some people are getting really caught up in like AI is going to take over the world, but these are, with Chat GPT and the GPT-3 that I use, these are natural language processors. They are nowhere near the sophistication of taking over the world yet.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios every week as we learn how others had the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 10X for Gen XYZ podcast. I'm Zach Winter.
And I'm Mark Adair Rios.
And today we're very happy to have guest Tery Spataro. Tery's a creative professional with expertise in brand creation, innovation strategy, communication, and content creation. And she helps businesses understand how to create successful products and brands by combining vision with cutting-edge technologies. And she's held leadership positions at some of the world's largest advertising and PR agencies, including Ogilvy and Edelman. And she's also an author and a creative artist with a focus on incorporate AI into her art, which we're really excited to talk about. So welcome to the show, Tery.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm super excited about chatting about AI. I think that'll be so much fun.
Yeah, it certainly is a timely topic, seeing so much of it out on social media these days.
Yeah, so that's actually a really great place to start. You have such a wide, looks like a wide, base of experience. But I would love to just, maybe start. It sounds like you come at things from an artist perspective. Is that how you was your main kind of focus early on as an artist, and then you moved into some other aspects of business, or how did you kind of get started?
Absolutely. Oh my God. So I got started, my background is actually in graphic design and fine arts.
Wow. Where'd you go to school?
So let's see, undergrad, I have a BFA from Albertus Magnus College, but I only attended, I think, a year and the first semester, a year and a semester. So I spent most of my time at Pure College of Art, which is in New Haven, Connecticut. And at that time, it was a lot of the teachers from the Yale School created Pure School. So it was known as the School of Realism. And oh my God, it was an incredible, inspiring place to be, but also terrifying.
You mean because you had to fill some big shoes, as you were going through your study? Yeah.
And did you go straight from school into working in corporate advertising and PR, or how did you end up there?
I did not. I went from school to going to Pratt for a master's in fine arts.
In Brooklyn.
And again, I didn't finish. It was super expensive.
Yeah.
Living in New York at that time, or any time for that matter, for any artist. So what I did was they gave me a glorious, amazing studio on DeKalb Avenue. And I spent a lot of time there, but I had a roommate, Caroline Kavanaugh. She's a really well-known graphic designer now. And what Caroline did was invite me into the computer lab. And it was love at first bite. It was
Nice.
amazing.
So wait, so up until that point though, were you mostly working kind of in the analog space?
As an analog artist, yeah, if you want to call it that.
Wow.
So I basically traded in my brushes and paints for ones and zeros.
Yeah.
Did you have a computer science background at all prior?
No, not at all.
So you just jumped in and you're like, okay, did you start with Microsoft Paint like most of us do? Or did you go straight to Photoshop?
No, it's worse than that. I started off with Digital Darkroom, Hyperstack, or HyperCard, things like that. I mean, the tools weren't really that satisfying. I mean, back then it was like, oh my God, look, I made this crazy little animation fall the girlfriend I get it, right? Um, but I don't know. I think I loved it so much. Actually, Pratt was like, "We gave you a studio,"
Yeah.
but and I'm like, "Yeah, that's great. I did my masterpiece. Ken Plater said that was my masterpiece. I'm done. I want to go hang out in the computer lab. Can I switch?" They're like, "No."
Wow.
And I'm like, "Okay." But the funny thing is, I want to say like maybe 10 years later, they invited me to go back to Pratt to teach digital, what was I teaching? Website development.
Interesting.
So I went from, learning, being a creative, a
Yeah.
graphic designer, traditional, to going into learning how to use a computer and being creative with it, to then becoming that person that knows a lot about it. So in New York, I had one of the first digital agencies. It was co-owned or co-founded by Alec Pollock, and it was called Stir. We actually had Stir, um, and that was it. I mean, my life became digital from there on. It was super amazing, and it's been amazing ever since.
That's
So, like
amazing.
everything, there's always an evolution, right?
Yeah.
So even with paint, like paints change. You learn like, okay, oils are great. There are new developments in oil paint. Same thing with acrylics and watercolors. But with digital, there's a cascading effect of always changing and learning new tools and getting excited about different things you can create.
Yeah.
What types of things were you creating digital, or you got into, doing more commercial work for ad agencies and for your ad agency and others?
I did a lot of the first websites. Reebok, Planet Reebok was one of my first websites. L'Oreal Cosmetics, all the, like any corporate site, I probably have had my hands on in some way, shape, or form, whether it was from literally creating the graphics to creating the website. I mean, back then it was all hard code.
Mm-hmm.
So, to actually developing the illustrations or the animations, the GIF animations back then and stuff like that, or directing my team. I mean, I worked with some phenomenal people in this business, and grateful to have them as like both colleagues and employees and both like that. It was wonderful.
You know what's so great about the computer space, and I don't know if we've missed that period, but I really don't think so, because you're seeing this big push by, the big four or big five, really de-emphasizing this whole, hey, you need a degree to kind of work in tech, get a Google cert or get a I don't know, a meta cert or something like that, and we will actually keep you inside the pile of resumes. And so what I really, and I think that, I've had this discussion on and off, but I feel like, it is possible, especially if we can start creating more apprenticeship programs and for people to kind of follow a little bit along the path that you had, where, the institutional kind of learning just wasn't really happening. And it was like, what are my tools and how do I master these? And getting in there and doing it and putting your 10,000 hours in. And so I'm just wondering how you feel about that whole thing, and if you see a path, in digital kind of, I guess, less digital marketing, but digital graphic design, for apprenticeships, or is everybody just coming out of Full Sail and they're ready to go? Like, what's your take on it?
I do love the idea, Mark, of the apprenticeship, because I think that's, I feel like that's one thing that I had with art school. Like my teachers, I was apprenticing. I was, learning from them, and I was to emulate what they were doing. But I think something that could be lacking is that feeling of apprenticeship now. I think we have a lot of people that have fantastic skills, and they're right away slotted in. This is what you have to do. Put the blinders on, and you're sitting there. And I just hate that idea, thinking people that have to be put in this robotic situation, because there's so much more richness when you have somebody that takes you by the hand and it's like, try it this way with this tool, not as a criticism, but as opening up somebody's mind, because then you get, oh gosh, you inspire somebody to constantly want to learn and not just be that, have that place that it's an awful thing to say cog in the machine. It just is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a organization in California called Calbright, and it's an online apprenticeship program. And they only have 4 categories. One is computer science. I know another is cyber, but there's such huge demand for these categories that they've carved out that it's far beyond what people with graduate college degrees have and are out there. So they're looking for additional people. So they're providing this training, like you were talking about, Mark, where you can get this. It's almost like a online trade school, but people are coming out with this, and they're able to get $80,000 jobs without a college degree. And I think that's a really good thing for people who aren't into going to college for 4 years, but they're looking for something that they can do that's not manual labor.
And
that's a good idea.
The other thing I was going to add to that too is just, if we're kind of thinking macro for a second, is, I believe it's one way that we in America can remain competitive, and also still be able to, enjoy some of the fruits of immigration labor, especially white collar immigration labor from some of the tech savvy countries, but still have apprenticeship programs that American kids and younger people can come up in and not get in the trap of the student loans and all that, and not feel pressured to just have some degree just to try to tick a box on a job application.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my God, student loans are outrageous. I'm still paying on my MBA.
Well, that, especially for a career like yours, you enter a career that you're passionate about, which I'm all in favor for. You should do what makes you happy, what you're passionate about. But the cost of getting that college degree, that graduate degree for certain professions, it's out of whack. It's out of balance. So
you're absolutely right about that. It really is. I envy my sister so much. She actually inherited money to go to school, which was great, but she came out with no debt. I came out with a lot of debt in New York City.
Yeah. Well, man.
Crazy. There's only so much you can do with rice and beans.
Oh gosh.
And it's one of those few types of debt where you can't get rid of it. That survives bankruptcy.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would hope that, maybe some changes can be made so that you're absolutely right. Like, students can go from, high school into apprentice programs and work with people like myself or other creative professionals and get that experience, and then be slotted into the job that's within that organization.
Yeah.
That'll be perfect because you're training somebody.
Yeah. But right now, what you're seeing at like the ad agencies, they're looking at resumes, and you've got that at least 4-year degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would imagine they're also really, the closest thing they have to some sort of quote unquote apprenticeship. That's ad agencies though, so it's a little bit different. But they take interns, right? And they're really, it's become like this elite kind of thing to get an intern at a big shop. All that normal people can't even get into these internships because competition is so crazy. It's turned into free labor on that end too.
Yeah.
And be much better if there was a hands-on apprenticeship that, at least you're learning something while giving your free labor away for a few years. I mean, internships, I'm sure you're learning too, but
we did pay our interns when I worked for the large agencies. And when I had an intern, I put the intern not to work on crap jobs because that's not what they were there for. And also, I was also had to, the obligation at the university was I had to actually go through the process of evaluating them and making sure they learn the things that I said they were going to learn.
Right.
But, you know, I was never abusive of the intern. I wanted them to learn. I wanted them to really see, what it was like to be in an agency and do like work, either copywriting or creative direction or graphic design or whatever we were working on at that point in time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Or even giving them special projects. I think we had a couple of really cool projects that they worked on and took it from, concept into something greater.
Mm-hmm. So how are you, let's talk a little bit about, all the rage right now and people are playing around with it. It's the new shiny object, ChatGPT, right? And go in there and you can punch in, and maybe it's not true AI. I don't know yet. Maybe it's just machine learning. Who knows? But some other kind of interesting things, it's all coming fast and furious, but there are some AI art kind of similar projects going on as well. And so talk to us just a little bit about where you're kind of moving in the space and how you're starting to integrate it and what kind of disruption you're seeing, not only within your own company, but your field right now.
So interestingly, I have been using the creative AIs for, I think it's 2 years now. And Chat GPT, I've actually worked on projects where clients know that we're using a Chat GPT. Sorry, not Chat GPT. It's GPT-3.
Mm-hmm.
They understand that it is. And one client was like, oh my God, do it, because we want to compare what you're doing to what we're doing and see what works and even out there. So it turned out that the things that I was writing actually had a higher elevation, a higher view, higher number of people in the audience that was reading it than the other. And plus it had a tone of voice. So it became the tone of voice for the brand.
You did an A test did you do an A/B test with your writing versus the GPT-3?
Yeah, they looked at it and did the comparison. It wasn't like
was it a focus group or an online?
It wasn't. It was just online. They pushed it out to see what the reaction would be.
I see.
And it was really interesting to see that. But I've had some really curious things happening with Chat GT. Chat GT. Oh God.
GPT. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I did ask it. I'm like, I have 2 bios. One's the creative bio, one's the business bio. Can you please bring these 2 together because I can't seem to do it? And it wouldn't do it. It only took the business part, and that's all it would focus on.
Interesting.
I thought that was kind of funny. But you have to be super careful. Like, I don't know if people read the fine print on it, where it says, do not take this as 100% truth.
Right.
And I did find that out with the other AI writing programs that I use. You have to do your own research.
100%.
Give it to it. You can't just take what it's telling you.
When you're hearing stories, oh gosh, I just heard a story. It was a social media post, granted, but it was a story about a kid who submitted 100% AI. This is very recently, AI written paper, submitted it in college student. What is that? Is that what? Oh, okay. Submitted it, and the teacher basically failed on the paper, the kid on the paper, because I don't know how he figured it out, but it just was not written in a voice that seemed correct. So, but then the parent came back and actually pushed back against the teacher. I forget exactly what the conversation was, but it essentially was, hey, you didn't say that he had to write it himself. You said that it had to be written or something stupid, and it like this whole like, but it goes to what we were just talking about before about, we're trying to use the universities and schools right now to tick off a box to get into a certain place in life, right? And the learning part of it, the exercise part of it is being missed. I don't want to say by a majority of people, but a lot of people are missing that. And I think that using 100% relying on AI to do your homework papers is exactly what that is, right?
It's cheating, whether you call it plagiarism or not. You're cheating. You're not writing this. You're not writing to the board.
The student isn't right. I mean, the student isn't learning about grammar and language and how to construct sentences. I can understand that, but what I don't want the students to be called cheaters because they're using that. They're not cheaters. They're actually learning what their future is going to be. And we need to have educators that can be educated on using these tools to understand that they're not easy to use. You're not just like saying, hey, bring my two bios together. Like, no, I had to put my bios in there, sort of make a format for it, and then ask it to bring it together.
And do you think...
But if the kid is using AI to write a report and he doesn't disclose to the teacher that he used AI to write the report, in my view, that's not the assignment. Now, that's a separate issue from, is it important for kids to learn how to use various types of AI for the future? And that I agree with. But
or having a module in your learning curriculum, Tery, of just, okay, we're gonna spend the next 2 weeks working with AI, learning how to construct questions that actually can draw out the best results, learning how to mini train the system, right? Like you did, where you had to put the two together, do some work. More than likely, hopefully, ChatGPT learned from that, and now the next person that tries to do that, they've learned from your exercise, which is the whole point of, it's not just Google where it's just like, ask me a question, I'll give you results. So you start to learn about how to effectively use it in a way that hopefully augments the human brain, which is, it's the ultimate form of I don't want to say AI, but the ultimate form of all of this, right? That you can't, the human brain, is so far advanced, in my opinion. We just don't use all of it. Me most of the time.
I understand what you and Zach are saying, and I think you're right. I think educators need to get educated on it so that they can help students realize that, no, you just can't put a category in there and expect it to do it, because that you're not learning anything, right? And that's not fair to you. So,
but it does raise an issue about, like, let's say you use it as a tool to do the first rough draft of your paper. Then you've got a huge step. I have other students who aren't using it, and then you can use it and refine it and put it into, make sure it's correct and grammatically correct and in your own words. But if you use it as a tool, I could see that,
Oh, and that's
hugely advantageous.
And that's the other thing too, is we do research. You're expected to do the research, to look up, maybe read some journals and whatever you're studying, and extract that information. Obviously, you have to sparingly use exact quotes, and you have to summarize and things like that when you're citing works. But you are going out there, just like I would imagine these AI things are sprawled across the internet looking for items. Do you know?
They're not sprawled.
They're not?
No.
No, they're actually just programmed in a very narrow field.
So they're within they learn within the system. They're
interesting.
So the chat GPT and the GPT that 3 that I use, they're called natural language processors, right? Mm-hmm. So they're trained, but they're supervised. They're not unsupervised, allowed to go out there and spawn all over some things back in from Reddit or do crazy things like that. I did have I was working with some chatbots. Oh gosh, it feels like a while ago, and I still have one that I like. Which in that particular instance, the chatbot does go out and pull things off Reddit and stuff like that, which makes me really nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course.
So, I mean, those are things that we should, we need to understand. And that's where educators need to understand, like, what's going on. Like, I know when I was teaching, I taught at Regis University for almost 6 years. And I told my students they could never use Wikipedia because it doesn't give them the experience of really researching. Like, the only way they got away with it is if they went directly to the reference and quoted that particular reference. So
That's how I was taught, actually, was exactly that. I think that's kind of what's going on out there is don't just directly cite Wikipedia, scroll down, go into the source, read the source, and pull out your citation and cite that source directly, if it's legit.
Really understand what's going on instead of, like, Wikipedia isn't the most, there are some issues with it.
Well, anybody can edit it, right? It's very go in there, mess around, and change the facts.
Exactly. I mean, I had a Wikipedia page up for a little while, and then somebody took it down, and I'm like, I didn't do it. Somebody else did. Why did you take it down? So anyway, it's just crazy the way things like that happen.
Well, tell us about how you're using AI in your visual arts. I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah.
So I did hold this up. So this is the proof of a new book, that a science fiction book called Beyond Darkness that I put together, and it's 119 pages of AI created art, right? But the story, I actually used my GPT-3 to help me write the story, because I wanted a story about a black hole. I wanted the black hole not to be like true science fiction. Like, Event Horizon is an amazing film, but I didn't want an Event Horizon experience. I wanted to capture emotion of what we were kind of feeling when we got locked in for 3 years, right, or 2 years. With COVID, I wanted to capture the feeling of being sort of ripped apart from our space and being pulled into this strangeness and this weird kind of world. So I wrote the story first. That's my process. And then I take the images that I want to convey from the story and pull those out and put it into, I use MidJourney for this one. MidJourney is not always my go-to. Playform is, because Playform is trained on my art and my photos, where MidJourney is trained on art references and all sorts of different styles of art and stuff like that.
So, okay, so
Go ahead.
how does the art, are you submitting words to kind of describe what you want the image to, how does that all come together?
The art creation?
Yeah.
So we call it prompt crafting or prompt engineering. And this is how I do it. I tell it the story first, and then I break it down into the creative direction. And then I break it down into the technical direction, like the lighting, the resolution, if it's cinematic, if it's luminescent, if I'm using or I wanted to use sort of a Kodak camera or a Polaroid or something like that to create the images. So
you're refining it. You're doing it through describing the visual look that you want.
So when you're, maybe I'll get on to play it at some point, but okay, so just so I have a sense of this, so you have a big prompt field, right? And you say, here's my story, here's my story. And then you describe in a few paragraphs, here's the lighting I want. Do you actually specific punch that in as the prompt? Here's the lighting that it should.
I don't say here's the lighting. I'll just use a comma and I'll say cinematic lighting. And where do you want the cinematic lighting to occur? Is it a top, on the side, coming up from below? How do you want?
And so just is there kind of instructions that the system told you, hey, use cinematic lighting in order to get the best. So you had to learn that as well to get the best results. So that's incredible.
Well, think of it, like if you were a creative director and you're directing the commercial, right? You need to be able to do, make sure the story is being told properly, make sure the lighting is correct, whoever actors or whatever on stage is moving around the way you want, the camera angles are proper, right? For me, this is no different.
Yeah.
And you're right, I do write paragraphs. It's ridiculous. I do not use no names. There is no one in, no name at all. No names. I use styles like for instance, Beyond Darkness is a dystopian story. So I will say dystopian horror, so I will reference things like that.
And you input other pictures like, hey, look at this picture to get, things like that, or no?
Not with this one, but if I start with an image that MidJourney will get back to me, and I say I need several iterations. Just keep making iterations and variations of this, so that it does look sequential. In that it is telling a story that looks like it came from the same person.
Crazy.
So.
And you can keep your prompt open to carry on the conversation over days and days. Is that how?
So I pay for private. So yes, in private, I actually have folders of all my artwork, and I also on my own desktop I have a notebook that I use that I keep all my prompts separate. So if I'm writing Beyond Darkness, there's like a whole list of prompts for that, and what page it goes to, and what artwork it goes to. So I get a little fanatical, but other people are like, yeah, I'm just having fun. I'm like, I can't have fun. I need that prompt. That looks, I might use that later on in something else.
This opens. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Have you seen the technology advance since you started incorporating AI to your design work?
So when I originally started using AI services, I started with Playform, and I was blown away by what it was doing with just
what year was that? Was that 2 years ago or?
2 years ago, yeah. And I was really delighted with what was happening, and the fact that Playform allowed me to create videos very quickly and watch it. I mean, there were simple videos to show transition. And I like that I could actually see like the texture of my work coming out, the style of brushes and things that I was using. But it's different now. So the difference is it's more an input of text. So Playform did include now text prompting in the studio, which is great. And I do see references of my work in there, and it does take a long time to create sequence. Whereas like things like tools like services like MidJourney and DALL-E 2 are very fast and work very quickly. So, I mean, I think we're going to see another change. I'm looking forward to, so where Playform already had an integration of video, I want to be able to take other images that I've created and have some AI video application be able to do those in between sequences to make something that works really well. There are a number of artists that are amazing at the AI video stuff. I worked at somebody that I work with, and Lucid Dreamer, and we do a lot of education, and he's like the master of doing the video and also music that goes along with it.
Are the videos in story form? So it's like a short story almost. And does it look like an animation or a film?
It does look like an animation. I know some folks are working on trying to generate that feeling of film. It's going to take them a little bit longer. So I'm curious to see what will happen with that.
How long do you think it'll take before AI you can write a screenplay on AI. AI will help you write the screenplay, and then AI will make a out of that screenplay.
Oh my God, you and another friend of mine want that service like right now. Do the screenplay and then produce it.
Right. Do you see that happening at some point?
Um, you know, I think it will happen at some point. It's just I want to say I don't know. It's not going to be now, or maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's processing power. I mean,
Yeah, it's processing
I think
power. I mean, I've already gotten dinged a couple of times with processing.
oh, really? They charge you? Do they charge you for using too much for your...
Too detailed.
Yeah. You don't you only have a couple of iMacs over here. What are you doing? Well, yeah, I would think that, a lot of it really does come down to, the exponential kind of increase in technology in terms of chips. And that also means that processing power increases exponentially. And of course, the size of I guess the size of the chips, what they can process on the size of those, so that you can have more in less space, with less, or more efficient power, is really what they're kind of trying
Exactly. Or you just have to figure out how to make it local on your computer and then worry about your own space. I want people to be super careful. It's like some people are getting really caught up in like AI is going to take over the world, but these are, with Chat GPT and the GPT-3 that I use, these are natural language processors. They are nowhere near the sophistication of taking over the world yet.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the art tools. They are great. They understand like diffusion and stable diffusion, and they're able to bring things together to process what you're telling it to, but it's not that sophisticated to do
No.
more than that. I mean,
It's specific AI, right? It's not general AI.
yeah.
And as you mentioned, most of them are in a box, so they're not seeing everything that's on the internet. So they are kind of being isolated.
They're contained.
Yeah.
Look at the work that Dr. Ben Corso is doing with AI general intelligence, because that's where we need to focus. I think this is a great deviation or distraction for us, but I think the real stuff is being done by him and others that are really going to change. Like, I dream of like when I get older, if that ever happens, I tend to think I'll always be a teen.
Well,
But I would love to, have this AI assistant that is not, I'm looking over there because, I want it to be able to materialize and for me to be able to give it direction and to do things and stuff like that, instead of like, having chatbots that, are great, but they fulfill nothing except, kind of a curiosity with me. Other people, they fulfill amazing emotional voids, but for me, it's just a curiosity.
well, and listen, I think that in terms of keeping perspective for all of us, just this whole idea that we're talking about and working with things that what we would consider, advanced computing concepts, and that they're here in fruition, even in rudimentary form, is incredible. Our lives are, exponential. I'll use that word again, exponentially kind of better for where we are. Just at this point, even if it's just a chat box that can kind of create some well-formed and structured and decent kind of data-backed text, right? That makes sense. So now, the other thing that was very interesting that I'd love to just ask you about is, what I find is, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur. The thing that I need to kind of be wary of in what I do is chasing after the next shiny object. It's the entrepreneur's curse to find that thing, not necessarily chasing business ideas, but the thing that's going to help our business, do better. But oftentimes when we find a new technology or something, we lean in so hard that it actually takes more time, and it's a less efficient use of our time because we're learning about it, doing all this stuff. And that's the shiny object syndrome. You get so deep into it. So I'm just wondering, are you still in, like, say for your science fiction, but I know it's a project, but has there been a whole bunch of learning around it that is taking your time that if you had just kind of typed it out or written it out, you could have gotten it done way quicker? Like, talk to us a little bit about that dichotomy there.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. I don't chase the shiny objects. I do like to understand how the tools work, and I always have a purpose. So there is an intent. There's always been an intent. When I got into the creative portion of the AI tools, like the pattern making and image making and stuff like that, my intent was always to do, like, clothing with branded, like, elements on it, or dishes or things like that. I wanted to sell stuff. That was the intent.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, so I writing my own actual science fiction book called Laundrygate took me, let's see, I started in 2016 and it took me to 2020.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
Doing Beyond Darkness with 119 images out of, like, I stopped counting because MidJourney just didn't offer me a tool to count of the number of images for this specific project. I've stopped counting at 588. There are only 90 images that are represented in the book, but there are more that, I did, but I just couldn't spend my time counting. But the book started in September of last year, and I published it in December.
Okay.
So 4 months.
That's incredible.
4 months to several, a couple of years.
Wow.
But I don't want to focus on the time aspect, because creativity shouldn't be about, like, oh God, I've got to make this thing. Like, there is this drumbeat amongst, like, our AI artist society that goes off in your head, and you're like, oh my God, I've got to make the next fabulous creative AI thing. I don't want to hear that. I want to be focused on, like, am I creating for a science fiction book? Am I creating for making patterns on objects? Or what am I doing?
But you bring up a really, really good point. And this is a really, really good point, because, I come from an artist background as well. And the way that I kind of leaned into my art was, it didn't matter how long. It was about the process and the journey and how I grew from it. This AI thing seems like, I guess the working of the tools and everything is part of the process, but you're really trying to achieve a result. I mean, let's be real about it. So there is a timing kind of aspect to it versus being in the middle of an art project and learning things about yourself. And okay, this is taking longer than I thought, but this is where it's going. And so I don't know, maybe, I don't know if I can articulate.
Maybe so much a time issue, but it helps you iterate more and achieve a better result, or the result that's more in line with your vision.
I think also you can achieve flow with using AI creative tools, as I did when I had a studio on DeKalb in Brooklyn, like, where you were so immersed and you don't even know if you ate dinner, breakfast, or lunch. You're just in it, right?
Yeah.
The same thing here, because when you're looking at the images and you're trying to make a decision on, well, I think it's giving me back blue, but I need purple, and you have to go back and rewrite the prompt and include purple, and so that it will change. I mean, some of the things are incredible. Some of the experimentation is amazing.
Yeah.
But you still achieve flow. I do get that, that excitement that makes you feel like you're in this altered state.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's really interesting.
And curious, have you seen Peripheral at all? The Peripheral?
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it.
Isn't it amazing? I do VR a lot too. And the crown, I want the crown, and I want the crown to work in both ways. One, so that I could do my, without having to type,
Yeah.
my, prompts come out here, though I may get some really crazy things.
Yeah.
And two, to be able to not have to have that thing on my face. And
Right.
just
Right.
be fully immersed.
So describe just real quick, what is peripheral? Because I'm not familiar with that.
It's amazing. It's It's based on William Gibson's book, The Peripheral, which takes us into, I want to say 2030, right?
Yeah, it's around then. Right.
Is that's a TV series, right? That's
It's on Amazon.
Gotcha.
It's a series on Amazon. Oh, you have to see it. I think you'll really enjoy it, because I think it's just like it opens up the mind to the possibilities. I just love the one thing from an entrepreneurial perspective that I love so much is these like 3D printing places that sort of are like the what is it, the FedEx Kinko's kind of thing.
Huh.
Like, instead of like, your products coming from, they just print them in 3D. And
Crazy. Yeah. Interesting. I don't
But
know.
I mean, so in the peripheral, they put on an electronic device over their head,
Yep.
and then they're transported to the future, and they go into essentially a robot that looks just like them in the future, but it's a mechanical being.
So it's like a cross between Avatar-ish with Johnny Mnemonic.
Well, it's made by the producers that made Westworld on HBO.
Okay.
So it's kind of got similarities in that sense. World, you have these robotic beings that look real, look like people, right? But they were, they were robots essentially.
Interesting.
And then
I thought the coolest part about that was it was the experience of, I know it's experiencing the future within a robot, but I mean, I thought that just thinking about that, like, I've never thought like, oh, wait, we should have these prosthetics of ourselves that
Right.
can go in. And I just thought that was really interesting, though, the timeline just blows your mind, because you're like, wait a minute, am I looking at it from this point in time, or should I be following this, timeline?
Right.
And what should I do? I mean, that is just an amazing experience in and of itself. So
That's pretty crazy. I'm gonna check that out. Like, that's the thing that, like, it's very interesting, right? You're peering into another timeline, and then the question philosophically is like, hey, does it matter if you're not, quote unquote, physically in the space?
Yeah.
Because you can still experience it realistically, like the brain, as experience it.
Some of that too.
Yeah.
And also the butterfly effect. And
Yeah.
so, it's very cool. You should check it out.
yeah, I think you'll really love it. I think it's just going to be mind-bending and interesting. And I think the other thing that Gibson dealt with, because he didn't want to talk about a like time traveling story. This is not about time travel. This is data. So this is about your own personal digital bits and bytes and what can happen. I just love that. You should read my book, Laundrygate, Strange Stories About the Future, where I talk about a witness historian, like back in that is from the future in 2070, and where you can actually experience the history from the past, not just like looking at it, but all sensory. I think we're missing the sensory part in some case. Maybe somebody will correct that.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
So what's next for you? Like, what do you got on the horizon that you're working on that you're really excited about?
So I'm actually working on a book with Lucid Dreamer called Creators Using AI. And this book is going to publish the stories of folks, our creators, artists that are using AI tools. And I liken it to, the Society of Illustrators, that annual that used to come out, and I think it still comes myself. But that's what I want to do. And Lucian and I have been going through the first quarter of the book will be all about the different essays that people have written. Like I have an essay from a collector that talks about collecting AI art. I have another essay by a futurist. And then the last part is all the stories about artists that and their journey through the tools and, showing off their best works. So I want to start cataloging that because I think it's really important. I think now is the time to start.
Cool.
That's my big project for this year.
Love it. That's
Sounds
awesome.
like a great project.
Yeah.
And how can people find out more about you and about your project and your book? Where's the best place for them to go?
The best place is teryspataro.com, or I do have a link tree, and it's a linktree/Tery Spataro.
And that's Spataro, Tery Spataro.
And I'm just simply Tery on Twitter, Tery.
Love it.
Nice.
Well, this has been a really fascinating, really great conversation. I'm so glad that you took the time to chat with us, and I think everybody's going to enjoy it. A little bit of a break from all this business stuff that we're always talking about. But it applies too. And it's fun.
It really does.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Tery. Really
Thank you, Tery.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to meet you, Mark and Zach. And this was just a delightful experience. I'm so glad I got to do this with you.
Yeah, us too. Thanks, Tery.
Thank you.
Awesome.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.